2024 is over. Oxford University Press, the publishing house behind the Oxford English Dictionary, selected brain rot as their word of the year for 2024. This word refers to low-value online content and the slang surrounding it.
What the Sigma?
The Macquarie Dictionary from Australia selected intuitification as their word of the year for 2024, which describes the process of online services getting worse over time. It's the same word that the American Dialect Society selected in 2023. However, for 2024, the American Dialect Society selected the word raw dog. A once vulgar and sexual term, this now just means doing anything without the usual comforts or convenience or support, like riding a 12-hour flight just looking at the seat right in front of you. With how interesting these word of the year choices have been these past few years, I thought it'd be fun to make a brief sociolinguistic video about the concept of the word of the year and ask the question, what can it tell us about society? So first, what is a word of the year? Depending on who determines it, the word of the year is usually a word or phrase that's gained prominence within a particular year. Different groups have been using different ways to pick a word of the year in the English language for as far back as 1990, when the American Dialect Society selected the word bush lips as their word of the year. The word is now very dated and is used to talk about lies, much like the term bull. It's a reference to when George H.W. Bush said on his 1988 campaign trail,
"Read my lips. No new taxes."
Members of the American Dialect Society, mostly linguists, meet at their January conference and vote on words that were nominated for categories such as Euphemism of the Year, Political Word of the Year, Digital Word of the Year, and Most Useful Word of the Year. Then, the winners of these categories are pit against each other to be voted on for the title of Word of the Year. It's kind of like the Grammys for word nerds. Other countries also do their own word of the year as well. The oldest example actually comes from Germany, where the Society of the German Language, a government-sponsored language society, has been putting on their own word of the year in an annual language retrospective they've been publishing since 1971. In 1999, the year that I was born, their word of the year was millennium. In Japan, publisher Jiyu Kokubinsha has voted on both a new word and trendy word of the year since 1984. This is done through a questionnaire sent to the readers. Japan also votes on a kanji of the year through a ballot held by the Japanese Kanji Proficiency Society. This is done to determine a Japanese character that represents the events that happened within the year. In 2020, the kanji of the year was mitsu, meaning close, and the word of the year was sanmitsu, both of which are a reference to Mitsu no Mitsu, or the 3 C's, an order issued by the Japanese government as an advisory of what to do to stay protected from the coronavirus, also known as COVID, which was the American Dialect Society's word of the year in 2020, the same year that Merriam-Webster and Dictionary.com chose the word pandemic. Cambridge Dictionary selected quarantine. Australia National Dictionary Centre chose ISO, short for isolation. The Macquarie Dictionary picked Rona and doomscrolling. The word that won their People's Choice Award was Karen, which I actually wrote my capstone paper on, and I think it's worth revisiting because that word is very dated now. But in 2020, Oxford University Press, for their first and only time since starting to do a word of the year in 2004, did not pick a single word because the year was so unprecedented. Oxford instead released a fascinating report, which I linked in the description, showing that the events that happened in 2020 affected the way we use the English language. For example, the use of the phrase social distancing exploded in the April of 2020, a time when about half of the world's population was under lockdown, with more than 3.9 billion people in more than 90 countries or territories having been asked or ordered by governments to stay in their homes. Which leads us to the question I asked at the start of this video. What does the word of the year tell us about society? Now, your answer can be different from mine, and let me know in the comments what your response is to this after you like this video and subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends and give me a... But I think, in the most simple of ways, the word of the year tells us what we're doing as a people. It tells us what's going on at a particular place at a particular time. Look at brain rot. It won Oxford's word of the year in 2024, the year that TikTok, the epicenter of brain rot, reached 1 billion users. And that question was pretty straightforward because the question I really wanted to ask was, how do the changes in the word of the year reflect the changes going on in society? But I couldn't ask that question in good faith.
I feel like the people who vote for the word of the year can't accurately represent all of society.
I can, however, say that the American Dialect Society's winner for the word of the year over the past few years have become more and more vulgar. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, I don't care. It's just an observation. Another observation is that usually digital or political words win the word of the year for the American Dialect Society when these words don't have as much staying power as other words, which again is just an observation. Like in 2005, the word truthiness won over the word podcast. which is a combination of the words iPod and broadcast. Podcast was Oxford's US Word of the Year in 2005 and has outlived the iPod it's named after, which was discontinued in 2022, around the time the word podcast was at its all-time high. Maybe we're all just finished stuck being in our houses and wanted to have a new hobby, so we started podcasts. This data can be found in a report that Oxford released last year to celebrate 20 years of doing a Word of the Year, which I'll link in the description as well. I want to end this video with a few of my favorite Word of the Year nominations over the past few years and a prediction about the Word of the Year of 2025.
One of my favorite Word of the Year runner-ups is when the American Dialect Society chose Blorbo from my shows as one of their Word of the Years for the most creative category. But my favorite Word of the Year is the 2017 selection by the Macquarie Dictionary, which is milkshake duck, a reference to one of my favorite tweets, which symbolizes cancel culture, which is funny because cancel culture is actually their Word of the Year for 2019.
I predict that the Word of the Year 2025 by one of these organizations will have something to do about the current American president. Maybe something he says, maybe something he does. I don't know. It's not happened yet. I hope that I'm wrong, but people often use politics to create new words, so we'll see how that goes. Thanks for watching.